My wife cheated, mocked me, and tried to rob me blind. But I was 10 steps ahead, and when the door burst open, their smug smiles turned into begging cries. The night was supposed to be uneventful, just like any other. I was in the living room, scrolling through my phone, sipping a cold beer when it happened. The door swung open so hard it slammed against the wall, and in came my wife, Melissa, and her new plaything, Andrew, with the arrogance of people who thought they owned the world. I barely recognized her. That devilish smirk, the way she draped herself over him, a stark contrast to the woman I married. But the real shocker? Andrew had a gun, and Melissa was holding the cash I kept hidden in our safe, like it was her goddamn prize. Well, looks like the sucker's home, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Surprised to see us? Her words were knives, cutting deeper than I ever thought possible. This wasn't the woman I loved, not even close. Andrew cocked the gun, pointing it directly at me, as if it were some kind of sick joke. We're taking everything, Jason, your money, your house, hell, even your dignity, he sneered, stepping closer. You were too dumb to see what was right under your nose. Then, as if to twist the knife further, Melissa laughed. Did you really think I was happy with you? A boring, predictable man with no ambition? But what they didn't know was that they had walked right into my trap. Every word out of their mouths, every movement, was all part of my carefully laid out plan for revenge. I smirked. This was only the beginning. I leaned back in my chair, not moving an inch, even with the barrel of the gun staring me down. The smirk on my face must have irritated the hell out of Andrew because his grip tightened, but I wasn't afraid. No, not at all. In fact, I was enjoying this. Every second they stood there, flaunting their twisted affair, was just another step closer to the moment I'd been waiting for. You think this is funny? Andrew's voice cracked, and it was all I could do not to burst out laughing. The guy was all bark, no bite. He thought waving that gun around made him a tough guy. But in reality, he had no clue what kind of storm he'd just walked into. Funny? I finally responded, locking eyes with Melissa. Oh, you have no idea. This is just perfect. Melissa's smug grin faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. She stepped forward, flaunting the wads of cash she'd taken from the safe like a schoolgirl showing off a new toy. You didn't really think I'd stick around with you forever, did you, Jason? You're pathetic. You don't excite me. I need a real man. She cast a sultry glance at Andrew, who puffed out his chest like he was the second coming of some action hero. I wanted to laugh in their faces. The irony of this whole situation was delicious. For months I had seen it. The late-night work meetings, the sudden obsession with her appearance, the way she started locking her phone. I knew Melissa was seeing someone else. She thought she was slick, playing her little game behind my back, but she was sloppy. So I set up my own game. I knew where every dollar in that safe was going. I knew she'd try something like this eventually. Hell, I had been waiting for this exact moment. You think taking some cash and pulling a gun makes you tough? I asked, my tone calm, almost amused. You two really have no idea what you've just walked into, do you? Melissa narrowed her eyes, the first sign of doubt creeping in. What are you talking about? I stood up slowly, making sure not to look fazed by the gun Andrew was still pointing at me. Let me explain something to you, sweetheart, I said, taking a step toward her. That money? It's not even mine. I could see her face twist in confusion. It belongs to someone dangerous. Her smirk wavered, replaced with the tiniest hint of fear. What the hell do you mean, Jason? You'll find out soon enough. Before she could respond, a loud banging noise erupted from outside, 3 heavy knocks on the front door. My heart raced, but I kept my cool. It was all going according to plan. Who the hell is that? Andrew snapped, his bravado faltering for the first time. I smiled wider but said nothing. Another set of loud knocks echoed through the house, this time more forceful, almost as if the door was about to come off its hinges. Melissa and Andrew exchanged worried glances. It was hilarious watching their confidence crumble piece by piece. Maybe you should answer that, I suggested, my tone dripping with mockery. Melissa stepped back, clearly unnerved. Now, Jason, what did you do? I just stared at her, saying nothing, letting the tension hang thick in the air. Andrew, trying to maintain control, motioned toward the door with his gun. I'll go see who it is, he muttered, though his voice had lost much of its edge. As soon as he moved, I caught a glimpse of fear in his eyes. He wasn't as tough as he wanted to believe. The moment Andrew disappeared down the hallway toward the front door, I turned to Melissa. Her confident facade had shattered, leaving only the frightened woman I knew was hiding underneath all that bitterness. You should have thought this through, Melissa, I said softly, shaking my head. You thought you could play me, huh? Well, you're about to see what happens when you mess with someone who's always 2 steps ahead. Before she could respond, I heard Andrew shouting at whoever was outside. The door was opened, and then chaos, yelling, scuffling, and the sound of someone being slammed against the wall. Melissa's face went pale. What the hell is happening? I walked toward her slowly, leaning in close. You wanted excitement, right? Well, here it is. Her expression was priceless, pure terror. She realized now that I wasn't the clueless, pathetic husband she had pegged me for, and she was about to realize just how deep my revenge went. Andrew's shouts grew louder from the hallway, but they were cut short by the sound of heavy footsteps coming closer. I turned back to the door, and a moment later the men I had been waiting for stepped into the room. Melissa's eyes widened in horror as she saw them. What did you do, Jason? Her voice shook, all the venom gone. I didn't answer her. I didn't have to, because this was only the beginning. The men who entered the room were not the kind you'd want to cross paths with. They were tall, muscular, and had that unmistakable aura of danger about them, the kind you only see in movies. But this was no movie, this was real, and the fear etched on Melissa's face was real too. Meet Tony and his crew, I said casually, waving a hand toward the 3 men who now flanked me. Tony, their leader, grinned wickedly, cracking his knuckles as he stared at Melissa and Andrew with a hunger for violence that couldn't be mistaken. They're here for their money. Well, technically my money, the money you thought you could take and run off with. Andrew reappeared, his face pale as a ghost. The gun he had been so proud to wave in my face now dangled loosely in his hand, useless. Tony's guys had already disarmed him, and by the look on Andrew's face, he knew he was way out of his depth. Melissa started backing up, her hands trembling. Jason, what is this? You can't be serious. You set me up? The disbelief in her voice was laughable. I crossed my arms and leaned back, savoring the moment. Oh, I'm dead serious, Melissa. You thought you could waltz in here, take everything, and just leave me in the dust? You're not as smart as you think you are. Andrew took a shaky step forward, his voice quivering. Look, man, we didn't know. This was a mistake. We'll give the money back. Let's just forget about all of this, all right? Tony chuckled darkly, stepping forward to stand shoulder to shoulder with me. Oh, you think you can just give it back, huh? You're messing with serious people here, kid. This isn't a game. The tension in the room became suffocating. Andrew glanced at Melissa, desperation in his eyes, but she was too far gone, rooted to the spot in shock. The smug woman who had walked in here like she owned the place was nowhere to be found now. She was just a trembling mess, caught in the web she had spun for herself. I approached her slowly, speaking in a low, measured tone. You think I didn't know? All those nights you were sneaking around, all those lies you fed me about working late, you really thought I was that dumb? No, Melissa, I've been watching you. I've been planning this for months. Tears welled up in her eyes. For a second, I almost felt pity. Almost. Jason, I didn't mean for things to go this far, she whispered, her voice breaking. It was a mistake. I was confused. I scoffed. Confused? You were confused when you jumped into bed with him? I pointed to Andrew, who stood there like a deer caught in headlights. Don't give me that crap, Melissa. You weren't confused. You were selfish. You thought you could use me, take what you wanted, and walk away without consequences. Well, guess what? Actions have consequences. Tony signaled his men to grab Andrew, who immediately panicked. Wait. You don't have to do this, man. We'll leave. I swear we'll leave and never come back. Tony's grin widened. Oh, I know you won't. But we're not done yet. They dragged Andrew toward the door, and I didn't bother to stop them. He wasn't my problem anymore. He was going to pay for sticking his nose where it didn't belong. I had bigger things to deal with. Melissa collapsed to her knees, her tears now flowing freely. Please, Jason, I'm sorry. I messed up. I'll do anything. Just don't hurt me. The sight of her begging for mercy was almost pathetic, but there was a part of me that relished it. This was the woman who had shattered my trust, who had thought she could walk all over me and leave without facing any consequences, and now she was broken. I crouched down, looking her dead in the eyes. I'm not going to hurt you, Melissa. I don't need to. You've done a fine job of destroying yourself. For a moment she stared at me, confusion mixed with hope. She probably thought I was going to forgive her, let her crawl back into my life and pretend this never happened. But she was wrong. I want you out, I said coldly. Out of my house, out of my life. You don't deserve another second of my time. And don't think for a second that you're getting any of my money. That cash you tried to steal, it's already gone. I moved it weeks ago. Her face crumpled, the last shred of her composure falling apart. Jason, please. I stood up, looking down at her like she was nothing. You wanted excitement. You wanted danger. Well, you got it. Now get out of my house. Tony's men returned, having dealt with Andrew, and stood by the door, waiting. Melissa looked around, as if trying to find some way out of this nightmare, but there wasn't one. She had made her bed, now she had to lie in it. I didn't look back as she gathered herself up and stumbled out of the house, her tears still streaming down her face. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud, sealing her fate. The silence that followed was deafening, but I wasn't unsettled by it. In fact, for the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment where the tables turned, and I took back control. And it wasn't over yet. The door clicked shut behind Melissa, and I stood there, letting the silence settle over me like a soothing wave. For months I had lived under the weight of her lies, her betrayal gnawing at me from the inside out. But now, watching her walk out of my life, I felt lighter, almost free. I hadn't just kicked her out of the house, I had kicked her out of my soul. Tony's men lingered for a moment, waiting for my cue. I turned to him, the glimmer of satisfaction still twinkling in his eyes. "You handled Andrew?" Tony chuckled darkly. "Oh, we handled him all right. He won't be a problem anymore." He winked, a knowing smile on his face. "You don't have to worry about him sniffing around your money or your wife again." I nodded, not needing any more details. Andrew was a footnote in this whole disaster, a pathetic accessory to Melissa's twisted game. I wasn't interested in what became of him. My real focus was Melissa, her betrayal, her lies, and the wreckage she had left behind. Tony's part of the job was done, and now I had to deal with the emotional mess that was my life. Tony clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did good, Jason. A lot of guys would have folded. You played it smart." He grinned. "If you ever need anything, you know where to find us." I gave him a tight smile. "Thanks, Tony. I appreciate everything you did." With a final nod, Tony and his men walked out, leaving me alone in the house that felt so much emptier now. I took a deep breath, the events of the last few hours swirling in my mind. Everything had gone according to plan. The cheating wife was out, her lover was dealt with, and my money was safe. But now that the dust was settling, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that, despite winning, I had still lost something. I sat down on the couch, the same couch where Melissa and I had shared countless memories, and stared at the blank wall ahead. The house was quiet, too quiet. The adrenaline that had been keeping me steady began to wear off, and the reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I had set out for revenge, and I got it, but now what? The emptiness crept in slowly, wrapping itself around me like a cold blanket. I had won, but at what cost? The woman I had loved, the life we'd built together, all of it had been poisoned by her betrayal. Even with her gone, I could still feel the echoes of her lies in every corner of this house, every picture frame, every piece of furniture. It all felt tainted, a reminder of the illusion I had lived in for far too long. I leaned back, closing my eyes. I could still hear Melissa's voice in my head, her laughter, her excuses, her twisted words. "You're boring, Jason. I need excitement. I need someone who makes me feel alive." Her words replayed like a broken record, and with each replay, my anger flared. Boring? That's what she called me. A man who worked tirelessly to build a life for us, who made sacrifices, who stayed loyal even when the cracks started to show. And in return, she threw it all away for a fling with some lowlife who didn't even have the brains to pull off their pathetic little heist. But deep down, I wasn't just angry with her. I was angry with myself, for not seeing it sooner, for letting things get this far. The signs had been there for months. The sudden distance, the late-night phone calls, the way she'd turn away from me in bed, her body cold and unresponsive. I had ignored it all, choosing to believe that we were just going through a rough patch, that we could fix it. How foolish I'd been. The sound of my phone buzzing on the coffee table snapped me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, Melissa's name. For a moment, I just stared at it, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Did she really think she could call me now, after everything? I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button, but something made me pick up instead. "What do you want, Melissa?" I asked, my voice cold, detached, the warmth I'd once felt for her completely gone. Her voice came through the line, shaky and frantic. "Jason, please, I need to talk to you. I made a mistake. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I need to see you, please." I clenched my jaw, the fury bubbling back to the surface. "You need to see me? For what? To lie to me some more? To tell me how you didn't mean it? I'm done, Melissa. You're out of my life." "Jason, please, Andrew, he's dangerous. You don't understand what he's capable of." Her words broke off into sobs. I cut her off, my voice hard as steel. "I don't care, Melissa. You chose him. You picked him over me, over us. You made your bed, now lie in it." I hung up the phone before she could say anything else. Whatever problems she had with Andrew now, they were hers to deal with. She was right about one thing, though. Andrew was dangerous, but not in the way she thought. The only real danger Andrew posed was the stupidity of trusting someone as ruthless as Tony and his crew. She was on her own now, and I wasn't about to save her. As I sat there, staring at the phone, my mind raced. The emotional impact of her betrayal had hit me harder than I thought, but one thing was clear. I wasn't the same man I was before this. I had changed, and I had no intention of going back to being the fool who was taken for granted. The house was quiet again. Too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your thoughts louder, amplifying everything you've been trying to push down. After hanging up on Melissa, I tossed my phone across the room, letting it hit the wall with a satisfying thud. It wasn't broken, but that wasn't the point. The point was, I was done with her. Or at least, I wanted to be done. But even with her out of the house and Andrew dealt with, there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind, like an itch I couldn't scratch. Something wasn't sitting right. My gut had kept me alive for years, and it was screaming at me now. Melissa's sobbing phone call was stuck on repeat in my head, her voice shaking as she begged me to listen. Andrew, he's dangerous. You don't understand what he's capable of. She was scared. I could hear it, and as much as I hated to admit it, part of me still cared. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was years of marriage making me soft, or maybe I wasn't as cold as I wanted to be, but if there was one thing I knew for sure, it was that I wasn't going to let her drag me down into whatever mess she'd created for herself. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. I needed to clear my head, get some fresh air, anything to shake off the lingering tension. As I walked outside, the cool night air hit my face like a slap, bringing me back to the present. The sky was cloudless, stars shining brightly. A beautiful night, completely at odds with the storm brewing inside me. My phone buzzed again. I almost didn't check it, but my instincts got the better of me. It was a message, not from Melissa, but from an unknown number. You should have listened to her. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared at the screen. What the hell? Before I could process the message, another one came through. She was right about Andrew. He's coming for you. For a second, I thought this was some sick joke, but that second quickly evaporated as headlights appeared at the end of the street, growing brighter as they barreled down toward my house. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a prank. This was real. I sprinted back inside, locking the door behind me. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for whatever was about to happen. My mind raced. Where was my gun? It had been a while since I'd even thought about it, but if Andrew really was coming, I sure as hell wasn't going to be caught unarmed. I found the gun in the back of my closet, hidden behind a box of old papers. I hadn't used it in years, but the weight of it in my hands felt like an old friend. Just as I was loading the chamber, I heard it, a loud crash from the front of the house, the sound of wood splintering, like the door had been kicked in. My pulse quickened. I crouched down, moving toward the hallway quietly, gun in hand. Every sound seemed amplified, the creak of the floor beneath me, my own breathing, the pounding of my heart. I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer. My grip tightened on the gun, and then I saw him, Andrew. He stood in the entryway, his face twisted into a snarl, looking like a man who had lost everything and didn't care anymore. He wasn't holding a gun this time, just a crowbar, swinging it lazily in one hand. But the wild look in his eyes told me he was more dangerous now than ever before. You thought you could just get rid of me, huh? Andrew's voice was low, but it was laced with venom. You think you can send your little goons to rough me up and walk away from this? I kept the gun aimed at him, steadying my breath. I didn't send them, Andrew. You and Melissa walked into that one yourselves. But I'm warning you now, you take one more step and this ends here. He laughed, a cold, broken sound that echoed through the house. You think I'm afraid of you, Jason? You're just as pathetic as she said. You don't deserve any of this, not the house, not the money, not her. I narrowed my eyes, my finger hovering over the trigger. You've got a lot of nerve coming in here after everything. His expression darkened, and he tightened his grip on the crowbar. I came here for what's mine. I came here for her. Something snapped in me. The rage I'd been holding back boiled over, and I took a step forward, my voice colder than I ever thought possible. She's not yours. She was never yours, and she's not mine anymore either. Andrew's eyes flickered, but I didn't give him a chance to respond. I fired a shot, intentionally missing, hitting the wall next to him. The sound was deafening in the small hallway, but it did the trick. His bravado vanished in an instant, replaced with fear. Last chance, Andrew, I growled. Get out now. For a moment, I thought he might actually swing that crowbar, but then he hesitated. The wild look in his eyes faltered, and he took a step back. You're going to regret this, he spat, his voice shaking. Not as much as you will if you stay, I replied, keeping the gun raised. Andrew backed up, his confidence shattered. He glanced toward the door, then back at me, before turning and running out into the night. I stood there, listening to the sound of his footsteps fading into the distance, and then silence. The tension left my body all at once, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. But it wasn't over. Not yet. I knew Melissa would try something. She wasn't the type to stay quiet. But as I stood there, gun still in hand, I realized one thing was crystal clear. I wasn't the same man I used to be. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. The house was eerily still after Andrew fled, the echoes of the gunshot lingering in the air. I stood frozen in place, trying to process what had just happened. The adrenaline that had been coursing through my veins began to fade, replaced by a dull ache of realization. This wasn't over. not by a long shot. Melissa and Andrew weren't going to walk away quietly. They had too much at stake, and people like them didn't give up that easily. I slid the safety back on my gun and took a deep breath to steady myself. My mind raced through everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, the twisted plot they had concocted. This was more than just a messy affair. They were desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. As I sat down on the couch trying to gather my thoughts, my phone buzzed again. This time, the number wasn't unknown. It was her, Melissa. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. After everything, I didn't owe her anything. But something inside me, not forgiveness, but maybe curiosity, made me pick up. "Jason, listen to me," she started, her voice panicked. There was none of the seductive tone she used to have, no arrogance left. She was terrified. "Andrew's lost it. You need to get out of there. He's coming back. And this time he won't stop." I clenched my jaw, my knuckles white around the phone. "I already handled him, Melissa. He's gone. But you're done. I don't care what happens between you two now. I told you, you made your choice." Her breath hitched, and I could hear the desperation in her voice, like a cornered animal. "You don't understand, Jason. He's not coming back alone. He's bringing someone else, someone worse. Please, you have to believe me." I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. "Bringing someone worse? After everything you two pulled, do you expect me to believe you now? You pointed a weapon at me, Melissa. You walked in here with him, like you owned the place, ready to take everything, and now you want me to trust you?" Her voice cracked. "I made a mistake. I didn't think he'd go this far. I'm sorry. I didn't know he was planning this. He's out of control." I sat up straighter, a sense of foreboding tightening in my chest. As much as I wanted to slam the door on this conversation, something in her voice, real fear, stopped me. "What do you mean, worse?" She hesitated, and I could almost hear her swallow hard on the other end of the line. "He's bringing a guy named Marco. He's a fixer, a real criminal. Jason, Andrew thinks if he can't scare you himself, Marco will. I'm telling you, they're coming back to finish this." My grip tightened on the phone. Marco. The name sent a chill down my spine. I had heard of him through whispers, rumors from Tony's world. He wasn't just some thug, he was the kind of guy who cleaned up messes with bodies, the type who didn't ask questions and didn't leave witnesses. "Why should I believe you, Melissa?" I finally asked, my voice low and threatening. She sounded like she was crying now, completely breaking down. "Because I'm scared. I'm scared of him, Jason. I thought I could control Andrew, but I can't. Marco's going to kill you. He's going to kill both of us if this goes south." Her words sank in slowly. This wasn't just about money or an affair anymore. This was about survival, for both of us. As much as I wanted to wash my hands of her, I couldn't ignore the gravity of the situation. Marco wasn't someone you could just throw out of your house with a warning shot. If he was involved, things were about to get very much worse. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "I'm hiding," she whispered, her voice barely audible now. "I don't know how much time we have, but I have heard them talking about it. Andrew is going to bring him to your house tonight." I hung up without another word. This wasn't about Melissa anymore. It wasn't even about Andrew. I immediately called Tony. If anyone could help me out of this mess, it was him. He picked up after a few rings, his voice gruff but calm as always. "Jason, what's going on?" "I thought we handled everything." I quickly explained the situation, not wasting time on unnecessary details, and Andrew got it. "I know Andrew's bringing a guy named Marco. Do you know him?" The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. "Yeah, I know Marco," I said, my voice darker than before. "I'm not planning to hit him to make a move," I said, pacing now. "I need you to get here first." I hung up, feeling the walls closing in around me. I moved fast, placing myself by the window, watching them clearly now. The headlights cut through the darkness, and I saw Andrews pacing, disheveled and angry, and a clear man beside him, clearly someone who could only be that man Marco. Even from this distance, I could see the cold calculation in his eyes. This was not a negotiation. I pulled back from the window, staying low, my mind racing through every possible option. My gun was still in my hand, but I knew Marco wouldn't be so easy to scare off like Andrew was. This guy was a pro. The front door creaked open, and I heard a voice ring out, trying to sound tough. But there was something in their trembling voice. "Jason, you think you can just get away from us?" I didn't move. I stayed crouched in the shadows, watching them through a narrow crack in the hallway. Marco walked in behind him, quietly behind Andrew, silent, almost eerily calm. He wasn't here to make threats. He was here to finish the job. "Where is he going?" I whispered, muttering to myself, feeling the frustration bubbling up. "He's probably hiding," I muttered, muttering about him being somewhere out there. Marco stayed silent, just moving through the house slowly, methodically, like he was hunting something. The tension in the house was unbearable, like a coiled wire ready to snap. I glanced out the back door, my heart racing, so I thought fast it might give me away my chance to slip out. But just as I moved, a voice came from behind me. "You're a smarter man than I thought." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I turned slowly, and saw Marco standing there. His eyes locked on me. He hadn't even raised his voice. "You should have listened," he said calmly, his presence alone filling the room with menace. I raised my gun, pointing it directly at Marco, my hand steady despite the fear pounding in my chest. "Take one more step closer to me," I said, "and I'll shoot you." Marco smiled for a moment, a slow, unsettling smile. "You think you're not a killer, Jason?" he said. "Not yet." He took another step, deliberately testing my nerve. I shot him a look, the room filling with silence. Then, with a speed I didn't expect, Marco lunged forward. I fired once, twice, missing shots, hitting the wall as he tackled me to the ground. The gun slipped from my grip, skittering across the floor. Marco pinned me down with surprising strength, his hand around my throat, squeezing just enough to make me see stars. "You're not ready for this," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "You're out of your league." Andrew hovered nearby, a smug look on his face. "Told you, man, told you he was weak." Marco tightened his grip for a moment, then suddenly released me, standing up as if bored. "Take him outside," he said to Andrew, his voice flat and emotionless. "We'll finish this in the woods." Andrew eagerly moved toward me, yanking me to my feet. I tried to struggle, but it was no use. Marco had drained the fight out of me in seconds, and Andrew was too high on his own ego to realize what was about to happen. Just as they started dragging me toward the door, there was a loud crash from the front of the house. The door burst open, and I heard the unmistakable sound of Tony's voice. "Nobody moves." Marco spun around, his eyes narrowing as Tony and his crew stormed in, guns drawn. "You're too late," Marco said, his voice as calm as ever, but Tony wasn't having it. "Drop him, Marco. This isn't your fight anymore." For the first time, I saw something flicker in Marco's eyes, doubt. He glanced at Andrew, then back at me, before slowly releasing his grip. Andrew, on the other hand, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "What the hell is this, Tony?" I thought. "Shut up, Andrew," Tony snapped, his gun trained on Marco. "You two are done." There was a tense standoff, neither side moving, but it was clear Marco knew when he was outnumbered. He slowly raised his hand, stepping back. "You want him, Tony?" "Fine," he said, "but this isn't over. Not by a long shot." Tony didn't lower his gun, but his voice was steady. "You take one more step toward Jason, and I'll make sure you never walk away again. Now get out." Marco glared at me, his eyes promising revenge, but he knew better than to push it. He turned and walked out the front door, with Andrew scurrying behind him like a kicked dog. The moment they were gone, I collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Tony holstered his gun and walked over to me, offering a hand. "You all right?" I took his hand and nodded, still shaken. "Yeah, thanks for showing up when you did." Tony gave me a grim smile. "You're lucky. That guy, he doesn't back down often. You've got bigger problems now." I nodded, the weight of it all sinking in. This wasn't the end. Marco wasn't the kind of guy to just walk away. He'd be back, and next time, he wouldn't be alone. But at least for tonight, I had survived. The door closed with a dull thud behind Marco and Andrew, leaving me standing there, leaning against the wall, drained but alive. I exhaled slowly, my hands still trembling from the adrenaline rush. I had escaped the immediate threat, but the shadow of what was to come still loomed large over me. Marco wasn't the type to forget, and I knew this was just the beginning. Tony stepped forward, his face grim, his voice steady. "You did good, Jason, but this isn't over." His eyes, cold and hard, were filled with a concern that wasn't common for a guy like him. He wasn't just stating a fact, he was warning me. I pushed myself off the wall, the soreness in my muscles starting to set in. "I know, Tony," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "I'm not naive enough to think that a guy like Marco just walks away." Tony's crew was already sweeping through the house, making sure everything was secure. I watched them work with quiet efficiency, but none of it gave me peace. My mind was still spinning, replaying the events of the night, Melissa, Andrew, and Marco. It was like a twisted chess game of every move, and I was still in the thick of it. "What's going to happen?" I asked, my voice heavier than before. Tony crossed his arms, leaning against the kitchen counter. "What's next is, you've got a choice to make. Either you stay and fight this thing, or you'll disappear. Marco's not someone you can just bargain with, and he won't stop until he's either dead or gets what he wants." I frowned, processing his words. Disappearing sounded tempting, starting over, away from all this madness, but as I thought about it, something inside me hardened. Why should I be the one to run? Why should I let Melissa, Andrew, and now Marco take everything from me? This was my life, my home, I wasn't going to just vanish into thin air because they were too greedy and stupid to know when to quit. No, I said, straightening my back, feeling the resolve building inside me. I'm not running. This is my house, my life. If Marco wants to come back, he'll have to come through me. Tony studied me for a long moment, as if weighing my words. Finally, he gave a slow nod, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. You've got guts, I'll give you that, but guts alone won't keep you alive. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Then what do you suggest? I can't just sit around waiting for him to show up again. Tony scratched his chin, his eyes narrowing in thought. I've got a contact who knows Marco, knows how he operates. You might be able to get ahead of this, figure out where Marco's coming from and hit him before he hits you. I nodded, feeling the first sliver of hope in what felt like ages. Set it up. Tony raised an eyebrow. It won't be cheap, Jason. This guy isn't the kind you just hire off the street. Money's not an issue. I'll pay whatever it takes. He gave a small chuckle, shaking his head. It's never just about the money, man. But if you're serious about this, I'll make the call. As Tony walked away to set things in motion, I took a moment to breathe, to try and calm the storm in my mind. My thoughts inevitably drifted back to Melissa. I hadn't heard from her since her panicked phone call. The woman who had helped drag me into this mess was still out there, hiding, scared. Part of me wondered what her next move would be. Would she try to make amends, or would she double down on her betrayal, aligning herself with Andrew and Marco again? My phone buzzed on the counter, and I couldn't help the twinge of annoyance when I saw her name flash across the screen. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity, and maybe some small lingering part of me that needed answers, made me press accept. What now, Melissa? I asked, my voice tired, drained of any warmth or sympathy. Jason, you need to listen to me, she said quickly, her voice still trembling. I don't know where you are right now, but Marco, he's not done. He's going to come for you. He'll come for all of us. Please, you have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. The desperation in her voice was real, but I couldn't tell if it was because she actually cared about me or because she was finally scared for herself. Either way, I was done playing her games. Melissa, you and Andrew set this whole thing in motion, I replied, my tone colder than I had ever used with her. You wanted to take everything from me, and now you're trying to act like you didn't know what was coming. You're lucky Tony showed up when he did, otherwise, you wouldn't be making this call. She went quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. I know I screwed up, but Jason, you have to understand. Andrew's out of control. I thought I could manage him, but he's spiraling. He wants everything. He wants you dead, and Marco. He's not someone we can just scare off. You're right, I said sharply. But that's not my problem anymore, is it? She started crying softly on the other end of the line, but I felt nothing for her now. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Please help me. There it was, the last plea, the final attempt to pull me back into her mess. And for a moment, just a brief moment, I felt the temptation to give in, to help her, to be the man I had always tried to be, the man who protected her. But that man was gone. She had killed him the moment she stepped through that door with Andrew. No, I said, my voice steady and sure. You're on your own, Melissa. I hung up, letting the silence settle back around me. I wasn't going to save her, not this time. Tony returned a few minutes later, his face grim but focused. It's set. My guy is willing to help. We can make our move before Marco even knows what hit him. I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision settle in my chest. There was no going back now. I was in this for the long haul. Marco had declared war, and I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. Let's finish this, I said. Tony gave a short nod. Buckle up, Jason. It's about to get real. In conclusion, Jason's journey had been more than just about revenge. It was about reclaiming his life, his power, and his dignity. After betrayal, he had learned that sometimes even the only way to move forward was to burn away the bridges behind him and never look back. Betrayal had made him harder and sharper, but it also more put him in control of his own fate.